Ball pythons are one of the most commonly kept pets in captivity, and many people pick them up in pet stores every year. The truth is that a lot of people don't know how to properly take care of them. That's why today we're going to make a video on how to properly care for your ball python. When it comes to ball python enclosures, you have two basic options. The most common option that people tend to choose is a tank. Now, a tank is both good and bad for several reasons. The good thing is that it's clear, you can see the ball python, it's better for viewing purposes. The bad thing is that it really tends to contribute to humidity issues. So as you can see, there's a screen top here. For a ball python, that's really not going to cut it because there's going to be a lot of humidity escaping. You're going to have shedding problems, which we're going to talk about later. So if you're planning to use a tank, you're going to have to cover the top at least partly with something. The other option is tubs like this. You don't have to build a rack like this. You can just have tubs, on the ground with lids and everything. That's fine. But tubs are in some ways a better choice because it's a lot easier to keep humidity at the proper levels. They don't have the open tops. You just drill as many air holes as you want. If you're seeing too much humidity, you drill some more air holes. If you don't have enough, you cover some up. So it's very simple to maintain humidity with tubs, and that's the good thing with those. And as far as size goes, a lot of people think that ball pythons need a lot bigger tanks or tubs than they really do. Because in the wild, you have to remember that ball pythons actually live in termite mounds, so they live in tight holes in the ground, so they actually prefer tight spaces. So if you give them a humongous tub and you give them a little hide that they can cram themselves into, they'd rather just go into the hide every time. So for an adult ball python, an adult male, this tub is perfectly fine. This is a 28 quart tub, and this is more than enough. For smaller ones, I've actually split these tubs into two. So for babies, as far as tanks go, a 10-gallon is plenty for anything up to a sub-adult, and then for an adult you're going to want something like a 29-gallon. So nothing bigger than that. You really don't need anything bigger than that. And the important thing to consider is that you always need a hide, whether it's a half log like that or just a black little tub that you just cut a hole into. Whatever works. Anything that's just big enough for them to cram themselves into. You don't want anything too big. You're obviously going to need a water dish. Keep fresh water in it at all times. Change it probably every 4 to 5 days. Just make sure it's washed out and there's no possibility of bacteria growing in there. What I use for water dishes, you can use that if you're concerned about looks. Otherwise, these Crocs or porcelain dishes work perfectly fine and they're easier to clean. As far as decorations go, they're more for you than the snake. You can have as many decorations and stuff as you want in there. The more you cram up the cage and, put more things in there for them to hide under, the happier they'll be. But they don't really climb, so, climbing branches and stuff are not going to really be used a whole lot. But as far as, you don't need any decorations. I mean, as you can see, these are breeding setups here, and they really don't need a whole lot. As long as they have somewhere to hide, and they have fresh water, they're perfectly happy. So as you can see, and these tubs actually suit them really well. You may say that, it looks boring, it looks like it's not going to be a lot of fun for them in there, but the truth is that they're happiest when they have somewhere dark and small to hide in. So these tubs actually provide them for a perfect place. So if you want to have a tank and stuff, that's fine, but it's just keep in mind that tubs are also a possible option. Now, the important thing to consider with heating is that you always need a thermostat. I can't stress that enough. Whether it's just a cheap rheostat like this or, a more expensive herpstat like up there, you're always going to need one because without it, whether you have a heat pad or a heat tape, it's going to heat up way too much, and then you get burns, which are terrible. You're going to have to go to the vet for that. So there's no exception for that. You're always going to need a thermostat. So that aside, there's two choices basically. Either heat tape like this, which comes in a big roll. You can get it from reptile supply companies. The bad thing with that is that you have to wire it up. If you don't know how to wire, it's simple. It comes with instructions, so it's really not a big deal. It's a lot cheaper is the good thing, and it comes in quantity. So if you have something like a rack, you're going to have heat tape. It's a necessity. So if you just have, one or two ball pythons and you have them in tanks, it's perfectly fine just to have a regular heat pad that you get at a pet store. And again, you're going to have to hook that up to a thermostat, but it is more expensive, but if you only have, one or two tanks, it might be a better option for you. As far as temperature goes, you're going to want to have a heat gradient. So that means that parts of the tank are hotter, parts of the tank are cooler. Because, as we all know, reptiles are cold-blooded, so they can't regulate their own heat temp. They don't have a stable heat temp all the time, so they're going to need areas to be hotter and cooler, and then they can move themselves around to whatever they feel is the necessary temperature. So as far as the hot spot goes, the hottest part of the tank, you're going to want that to be 90, 95. I have mine set at 95. You don't really want to go any higher than that. And then it should, if you have the heat tape or the heat pad set at that temperature at the hot end, it should cool off to the other end of the tank, so the other end should be cooler. But you don't want the cool end to be any less than probably around 75. So ideally maybe 80. So if you live in a colder area, it's going to be a little tough. You might want to, if you have a lot of snakes, you can heat the room. If you don't, you can try insulating the tank or the tub a little bit. Maybe get another heat pad for the other end and set it at a lower temperature. But whatever you got to do to not keep it from getting too cold. One thing I forgot to mention is to get the proper heat gradient, you're probably going to want to cover anywhere from a fourth to a third of the tank with the heat tape or heat pad. So that's just a basic rule of thumb so that you can get the proper sized heat pad or heat tape. And then also, as far as lighting goes, you don't really need any kind of heat bulbs. You can use heat bulbs if you, like I said, if you're having ambient temperature problems, like if the cool end is too cool, you can use a heat bulb. But other than that, it's not necessary. If you're getting the right temperatures just with a heat pad, you don't need anything else. They don't need UVB, UVA light like lizards do. It's not necessary for snakes. So it's kind of a debated topic, but I know tons of breeders that keep thousands of snakes without any kind of UVB, UVA lighting, and they're doing perfectly fine. So I have no doubt that they don't require that type of lighting. But and then as far as actual lighting goes, you can it doesn't bother them. You can have a light as long as they have a hide where they can, get away from it. It's fine to have lighting so you can view them, but they don't really require any special type of lighting. Last thing with regards to temperature and heating is you're going to want a way to measure it. And the best way is to get one of these temp guns, which is fairly cheap, only $20, $25. And what you do is you just point it at anything, click the button and it'll tell you the temperature, and they're very, very accurate, within a couple, like 0.1, 0.2 of a degree. So I would recommend one of these just to make sure you have the proper temp gradient. So you can see how great this thing is. I can just take it, scan the back of the tub where the heat tape is, and there you go, 91.6. Scan the front, 77.9. Middle, oh, 80.6. So as you can see, there's a gradient. It's hot in the back, but it slowly cools off. So that's exactly what you want. And with this heat gun, you can actually even take and scan the snake, so you can see how warm or cold the snake is.